Hello, welcome to the Weekly Review, a program of South Sudan Network. My name is Roger Alfred Heron Mudi. I'm the producer and host. As South Sudan marks the 10th anniversary of its independence, today we are looking into the book titled A Shared Struggle, The People and Cultures of South Sudan, edited by TIM MCKULKA. The book was published by the Ministry of Culture, Youth and Sports, Republic of South Sudan, and the United Nations Mission in South Sudan UNMISS. We are joined today for this discussion by one of those who authored the essays in the book. She is Anyieth D'Awol. She's a human rights lawyer, artist, and mind-body medicine practitioner. She's also the founder of the Roots Project, an organization that works in three parts, mission of economic, social, and cultural empowerment of women, promoting cultural knowledge and preservation and building a peaceful community of respect and understanding between different South Sudanese communities. Welcome to the Weekly Review, Anyieth.
Thank you, Roger. Nice to be here.
Yes, Anyieth, an extract from the book says, pieces of the nation's history are scattered in archives, footlockers, family albums, and dusty boxes of slides around the world, around the nation and the world. It is hoped that this book will serve as impetus for the further collection and dissemination of the nation's history and cultural diversity for the benefit of all South Sudan's people, unquote. Starting with even giving us an idea about why the title, A Shared Struggle, The People and Cultures of South Sudan. Tell us more about the book.
So the book was put together by TIM MCKULKA, who is also my husband, but he was working with the Ministry of Culture and Culture, Youth and Sport in South Sudan in 2010 to 11. So this was, the title, The Shared Struggle, is really coming from a lot of division between people, talking about their own contribution to the war, their own experiences during the war, but there was also nothing really to bring it together for people to know from different cultures and communities that we all participated and all suffered and all, shared the struggle of building a new nation of South Sudan.
Okay, and yes, you can also go on telling us because the book was actually supposed to be launched, according to what I've read online, in December and on the 16th, a day before a day after the war erupted. So that didn't happen. The public launching didn't happen. So tell us about what people can expect in the book, because a lot of people, I'm sure, would like to know what they're going to get in the book.
Yes, so the launch was supposed to be on December 16, 2013. The timing was unfortunate. Of course, the war started one day before. The book was disseminated actually to a number of people, to all the sitting ministers at the time, and then also the ones that came afterwards. The book was also disseminated to a number of organizations and institutions, including the church, universities, and several people who were able to get access to the book. And it was also sold at the Roots Project to people who were able to get access to it. But in the book, really it starts off with a history of South Sudan, a history starting from 1898, and talking about all the struggles, all the colonial influences in South Sudan, everything that could be gathered. Tim had done the research starting from Durham University and also in Pitt Rivers Museum in Oxford, where the majority of South Sudanese archives and artifacts have been taken. Of course, these things exist all over the world as well, and also in private collections. So he was able to connect with some people privately and get all of this information together. So the first part of the book really focuses on the history of South Sudan, And then the second part goes into the people of South. So the first part is the history and the culture. So all the cultural things that you'll find in all the different tribes that we have around South Sudan, the 67 main tribes that we have in South Sudan. And then it goes into the people, where a portrait of a person from each community is featured. And they will ask a number of questions to do with how they do things in their own culture, if it's a ritual for birth, ritual for marriage, ritual for death, how they spend their life during the struggle, and what they wish for the future. And the last part really was a future through culture. You know, the potential, what can we actually do to bring South Sudanese together, to bring the history together, and also to change the narrative that we have been living through all of these years, which is a narrative of war and conflict and and also lately disunity.
Well, something you would like to share with us from the first part, for example, like the history and culture, some brief information.
So, I mean, the brief information would be just a comprehensive, but of course not a very full history of what has happened in South Sudan since the colonial powers came into South Sudan, whether it's the Turkish, the British, the Egyptian condominium, all of those things. So that history is pretty strong in that book, so all the knowledge is there. We also have Jacques Madut, who was the undersecretary at the time, also wrote about that, and just basically putting together the front part of the book, bringing the history together. So it's something that Tim had focused on, basically also making it accessible for everyone. This is a book for all South Sudanese, and I think every South Sudanese who looks at it and reads the history would be able to find their own voice and their own representation within the book. And this is also something that has come from it. People are able to look at it and continue looking at it because they see themselves represented in it. But it was always, shared also that it's not a complete history. It's not everything that's there. It's hopefully just the first volume, and it should be added to. And unfortunately, not unfortunately, but we're in our 10th anniversary. It would have been great to have had more edition, at least one more edition from the book until now.
And so looking at the second part, the people, interesting, you said there are 67 major tribes? So
yeah, 67 major tribes.
Well, that's interesting in the sense that, sometimes people popularly say 64. And then, some people also have been saying it is about 70 something. Over the years, especially during the war, these things kept coming up with people saying their tribe, actually, they're supposed to be a tribe. They're a tribe, and they're not. Maybe they're grouped together with others. And don't you think it's something that also need to be looked into more and more deeper?
Yeah, they may be 64, they may be more. In the book also it talks, I talk about 70 something tribes. So all of these things are what will come about when we have more participation, more dialogue, and sort of, just more communication and just sharing of information in South Sudan. So I may have misspoken by saying 67. I remember 64 is the official.
Oh.
But at the same time, I think that there are also people who are complaining about that. Our tribe is an individual tribe. It's being put in with another tribe, and we've been lumped together. But all of this is part of that. It's part of the communication that needs to happen. We need to start from somewhere. So this is really what this book was about, just beginning from somewhere and saying, first of all, we have a shared struggle. Secondly, let's all come together to build it up and try and collect information from all these different archives.
And what would you say about the third part of the book? What can we do? The types of the kind of observations you've been able to make, uh, looking into the future, and what we can create together as South Sudanese.
So the future through culture is the part that I really worked on and focused on, and also still focus on right now. Culture for me is what is bringing us together. The fact that we have so many different cultures. I like this, what UNESCO says about culture, which is, you know, cultural diversity is as important as biodiversity. You know, we all know that. We know that we need to have a diverse fauna, you know, to be able to live in this world. We need to have a diverse everything. You know, the biology of the body has to be diverse for us to be able to flourish. The microbes in the stomach have to be diverse for us to be in good health. The animal species have to be diverse for us to be living in this world, and so must also the people. So currently we're still trying to, you know, fit our way. I mean, there's a lot of things, society, the way things have progressed, that prevent us, and we're kind of unsure that we want to share, but sharing is really the basis of our humanity and also the basis of peace for South Sudan, in my opinion. And I hope it's not just my opinion, but it's just the way that it is. We have to be diverse in this world to be able to bring the solutions that the world requires, and also to mitigate the problems that we create by trying to, you know, be the dominant ones and make other people inferior and all of that. So this is something that I really believe in.
Talking about building peace and diversity, what would you say as the significance of history in creating peace and building a diverse country? You see the events, for example, leading to our independence, the struggles, there have been numerous, many struggles happened, and sometimes things become sensitive when people feel like, oh, our struggle is not acknowledged, our part is not recognized. We also did this, we also did this. Looking at the book and what you've been able to, the events, the major events leading to our struggle and independence that you've been able to document, you can tell us about those major events that you managed to mention in the book, and also the significance of having a kind of this shared history brought together and acknowledged.
History, I think for me, history is very important. I'm very, very interested in history, our national history. I'm interested also in my personal history, my family history. I think that, you know, the gaps of knowledge that I have in my personal history can also inform everyone, you know, for themselves as well, that we do have this gap on a national level. And it will really take us being together, speaking together, sharing together for everything to come out, and for things to be put in a way that we can all understand it. History is really important, and a full history, you know, not a history that's sort of kept partly in and partly out. I think just the freedom to be able to share the history of each culture and each tradition, and also each historical contribution, each shared loss that we've had in South Sudan. All of these are going to be, you know, pieces of the block that will help us to move forward in South Sudan. So I also work in documentation. I continue to do a little bit of human rights work with some colleagues in an organization called Remembering the Ones We Lost. And this really came about in 2013 after the war. People were dying, 14 people were dying, and there's no documentation. And from my understanding from human rights is that also the fact that people don't know who is being lost causes pain for people. And so acknowledging our shared loss is also part of this, knowing that in this community during this war, they also lost X number of people, and in that community, they lost X number of people, then we're able to understand what we're all going through, and also understand and appreciate the struggles of each community. So the role of history, I think, is really important, but it's also something that will take time, so it's like pleading for people to be patient. And, if you have a problem that you think that you're not being acknowledged, you're not being representative, speak up and share that knowledge. Someone will be there to collect that and also document it, put it somewhere.
Yes, and on building peace and reconciliation, you have been also involved in those issues, including mental health. And you tell us this connection between all those, issues of having sustainable peace and also the well-being of the people, mental health, and even reconciliation. And
Thank you. So for me, peace building has been everything that I've been trying to work on, starting from human rights. For me, human rights was more than just pointing the finger and pointing for blame for human rights violations, but it's really what is the best way that we can work, that we can live within a legal society where everybody knows and understand what we are all agreeing to. But of course, we haven't really also had that opportunity to agree how to live together. And so that took me also took me out of human rights as that kind of way of doing things. And I really wanted to work with women and in community, because beyond human rights, there are many things that drive people's behavior. And that's what I started to believe, that in South Sudan, you can know human rights, you can know what's right and wrong, you can know all of these things, but the conditions, the human conditions, can drive you to behave in one way or another. So I started to be very interested in what women were going through. And also, because we would take a woman and say, oh, your rights have been violated, you need to go to the police and you need to report. But when you go to the police, it's a completely different story, because they have their issues there. So for me, it became clear that, economic, social, and cultural rights as a very, very first basis are very important for women, and anybody in the community to have. And then from there, then you can start to think about, your role and how to improve your life and all of this. But the basic needs of housing, food, education, access to healthcare, all of those must be there for you to say, now I can go to the police because somebody violated my rights. And you have also the strength to push your case forward. But without that, it's just impossible. We're just moving water, and then also, so from there, I built this organization, the Roots Project, with my sisters and my mothers, and it was an amazing learning experience. But again, the war started, life also happens in many ways, and people deal with traumas, loss of family members, violence within the home, just war, all of these things that were happening, displacement, uncertainty, illnesses, chronic illnesses, so all of these brought trauma to people, brought trauma to the women, brought trauma to me, my family, everybody. And so this is where I started to seek an understanding about mental health. So I went personally to a center. It's called the Center for Mind Body Medicine. And in 5 days, it changed my life, because I began to understand what the connection is between the mind and the body and the mind and the spirit, so, and for me, being in South Sudan and working in this environment, I was injured in all of those areas, so too much trauma, too much stress leads to chronic illnesses. And then again, trauma, chronic illnesses also make you more traumatized because you're not able to feel yourself.
And how about in terms of addressing those issues, your assessment on the situation in the country, the response level, do you think it's adequate? Is it going well? Is it effective?
I think when the opportunity is there for people to understand the role that trauma is playing almost in everything, even in decision making, that people are receptive. I've been doing a lot of this work now with South Sudanese. We have been working and training through the center, and also myself as a certified trainer, working with doctors in South Sudan, from Juba Teaching Hospital, from the military hospital, working with civil society people, and really trying to explain that trauma is normal with all the experiences that we've had. But once you understand that and you understand its effect, then there's many things that you can do. And one of them is sitting together in community, being with people, sharing information, learning how to breathe, learning that you need to move your body when you're feeling agitated, and a whole bunch of other tools that are very accessible for us. If you're feeling stressed, go and do some Nungara. It will change how you feel. And it's a mind-body technique, actually. It's a mind-body technique. So this is also where I link, how we used to be with how we need to be, by combining the science of what is happening in the body. Because if we are not able to understand what is happening, because when you get stressed, your brain gets shut down. You cannot make decisions. You cannot see what's actually happening. All of these are boundaries to peaceful coexistence, and also to building our country. So I think that people are very receptive to this, and it's just the opportunities that need to be there to help us, have compassion for ourselves about why our country is not, in the way that it should be, but also know that there are many things that we still need to do in order to keep trying to bring our nation, at peace.
Well, so you also believe that there's a connection between this issue of peace building and this circumstance of history that our people underwent, the issues to do with trauma, result of war, and even the lack of enough health facilities, and even doctors who can respond to those issues of mental health on time and in the way that is needed.
Yes, everything is connected. Everything is connected. The work is huge, the resources are little, and the knowledge is small. But I believe that, these are just continued, growing things. I will not lose faith in South Sudan and our ability to come together. And that also brings me to just the hope that South Sudanese all over the world keep giving us. If we look at culture, if we look at sports, if we look at all of these, South Sudanese in South Sudan and around the globe are top notch. They're doing amazing things. We have a South Sudanese runner who has just made the USA team for the Olympics, breaking records, almost breaking records. We have South Sudanese in the NBA. We have South Sudanese in national sports in Australia and other parts of the world. We have South Sudanese artists, we have South Sudanese models, we have South Sudanese actors, so it's like through the culture and actually really just being, ourselves and our best selves, we can see that we have a lot to contribute within our country, to change the dynamics of our country, and then also to contribute into, to the rest of the world as global citizens. So the future is bright. And it's important just to bring that belief and that hope, up for South Sudan?
Well, South Sudanese are very proud people when it comes to the struggle that they underwent to get the country now to this to achieve independence for all these years, and this is well known. The book, A Shared History, you can't go without telling us some of the major things you mentioned there. You share with the South Sudanese the major events or the major historical events that they can find in the book, given that people are also very proud of those struggles.
You mean the wars? Are you talking about the wars?
I mean, major things. You see, with the struggle, even you mentioned earlier, you talked about the 18th century stuff and those, but like South Sudanese own struggle, including even the SPLA struggle, that probably I'm sure is. I have not seen the book, but I've not gone through the book entirely, but those could be the major events that you've mentioned in the book, I believe.
So some of the major events would be, I mean, I'm also not very well versed on all the major events on the struggle that would have been Tim's role, but really, I would say, you know, the South Sudanese are very proud people, and the history, the struggle of South Sudan, especially against colonialism, was very strong. I mean, South Sudanese have kept their cultures, they've kept their language. A lot of them have also kept their religions, their traditional religions. I know most people are Christian or Muslim, but I also have a very, you know, avid interest in the traditional religions of South Sudan, because they really show our history and also where we came from and how old we are. And I think that, you know, this knowledge and this history is coming from ancient times, you know, so I think this is something that people need to be proud of, and also to understand that the role of colonialism was to erase our history. But for people to know that our history is there, it does not start in 1898. It starts thousands of years before, hundreds of years before, you know, as South Sudanese who are able to count their lineage, you know, some people can count 300 years of their own personal family history, or generations, or 500 years, maybe some even just a little bit more. So this is something that we really need to be proud about, you know, that we have a history that even a lot of people within a lot of the African continent do not. South Sudanese fought back against colonialism most of the colonial history. You know, starting from, I'm not going to go into all these details because I also don't want to misspeak about them, but there's a lot in the history, you know, of struggles from Shuluk Gret to different communities that were fighting against people from, you know, from different areas, whether it's slavery, you know, to do with slavery, to do with occupation. All of these were there. Of course, the 1955 conflict, again, is just, it's a struggle. It's a struggle of pushing back a change of political dispensation. The peace, the independence of Sudan was coming, and South Sudanese were not happy about those changes, and so they are coming to, you know, to fight against those things that were happening at the time. And there we have Anyanya 1, you know, and then of course preceding that we have all those leaders, those politicians that were in the know and very active, keeping the people knowledgeable, and also keeping South Sudan at the forefront of the things that were happening at that time, you know. So South Sudanese struggles it's just something that we need to be proud of. We need to be proud that we were able to fight back. And for me, I think it's really important also to feel that we're able to push forward, push forward from that idea, of standing up and fighting, but also understanding that, there's a limitation to physical warfare. And there are other wars that we're actually in the middle of fighting right now. So the pride in SPLA, the pride in even now, the conflicts that are going on now, whichever side people feel themselves falling towards, I think that there's a place to be proud about the physical conflicts, that brought us to where we are, but also, there is room to realize that we have reached our limit with violence. Violence has destroyed more than we bargained for. And it's like we can win, but we're also burning the house down. We're also throwing the children in the fire or in the water. So we need to know that in our history as well, it's not just a history of conflict, it's a history of resilience, it's a history of culture, it's a history of being able to deal with all these different things, like our social fabric needs to be rebuilt because war has destroyed that while we were fighting, And so as we benefit all of those, we also need to focus, to refocus and say, what has been lost during these centuries of conflict, what can be brought back, knowing that we are in 2021 and moving forward. And also give ourselves the time, no more quick impact projects, teaching people in 3 months. No, we're here for another, 1,000 years, maybe more, right? So let's continue to take those lessons and modernize it, but also understand that our culture is important. And also change the narrative a little bit, because we're not a warring people. We just had war. We've just been through a lot of war, to fight for our future.
Well, as we are about to conclude, we need your final thoughts regarding the independence celebration, the 10th anniversary, which is happening this week, and the connection between what you've been just saying, generally just a summary between the importance of history and what we would like to do looking forward into the future.
Well, I would like to wish everyone a happy independence. It's been a struggle and an achievement to get this far. It's been a lot of pain, a lot of frustration and uncertainty, but we keep going, we keep going. My final thoughts are really that, hope in South Sudan has been up and down. I mentioned to you that I had moved to South Sudan in 2005 at the very height of hope and expectation. I was also there when the war broke out, which was the lowest point and continued going lower and lower and lower. And I hope that we're, wherever we are in this curve of hope into the future, one thing to always remember that I always like to remind myself is that we are not doing everything that we need to do. So that gives us hope, whether we're able to do it in our lifetime, whether our children are able to do it. But the more we keep going, one foot in front of the other, there will always be hope for South Sudan for the next 10 years to be dramatically different from the last 10. And wishing that that we take our lessons wherever we find them, in history, currently, in our culture, in our sports, from different places around the world.
Well, Anyieth D'Awol, thank you very much for being on the program. To our audience, we have been looking at the book, The Shared Struggle, The People and Cultures of South Sudan. It's a book edited by Tim MCKULKA, and it was published by the Ministry of Youth, Culture and Sports in collaboration with UNMISS, the United Nations Mission in South Sudan. Thank you once again, Anyieth, for your time.
Thank you, Roger. Thank you.